Good day to all ladies and gentlemen and welcome to my art studio. My name is Khan and today I'm gonna make the Stormbreaker. We all know that the Stormbreaker is the new weapon of Thor and his Stormbreaker is made up of voodoo metals on Nidavellir. But I'm gonna make my Stormbreaker in my studio out of Polymer Clay. So without wasting any more time, let's draw that. So as you guys know, before I start any project, I collect a lots of reference images and study them as much as I can. And it really gives me a lots of information about the model or the character. And as usual, I made my own layout design for my own convenience. And also it does really help me a lot. Anyways, for the armature, I'm using 9 gauge aluminum craft wire and make a simple armature out of it. Keep in mind there is no right way of creating the armature. It's just basically your perception or how you approach it. In short, you just need some basic and rough structure to work on. And I also use aluminum foil paper just to give a little bond into it, and in that way I can save some clay as well. And again, there is no real technique of doing this. So I am just wrapping the foil around until I get the thing that I want. But at the same time, I'm keep taking my measurements cause I don't want to overwrap. One more thing, this is just a normal size of foil paper from the dollar store. So that's why I need some extra strength and completely solid. So this is the oven base tray and I'm gonna use this tray throughout the whole project. For the initial structure, I'm using original Sculpey. This clay is very good for some basic structure. So I am covering the whole armature with this clay and bake it for 1 hour at the temperature of 300 Fahrenheit for the solid bond. So right after the baking, I just make sure the overall look is good because I really want this top part feels heavy and gives me the right momentum when I swing. Once I satisfied, I move down to sanding, which you guys all know that I love sanding on the clay. So I'm gonna sand this until I get the smooth surface so I can move forward. For the second structure, I'm using some Chinese clays by Shuttle Art. These clays are very cheap and gives a very fantastic results. So I mix black and white clay and make a grey tune out of it. Even though I will paint it later, but I always go for closest desired color and paint it later. In this stage, I will work step by step and fully take my time and not in rush. So I cover the main top first with the clay and make sure you apply a very thin layer of it. At this stage, this is just a rough model, so you don't have to be very precise. I also do some rough top side edges just for a guide for me to follow. So I bake the model, and right after the baking, it is very important for me to examine the top. So maybe is there any further changes so I can do it now. Luckily I don't have it, so it's time for me to go to the next round, which is sanding. And again, I don't want a perfectly smooth surface here, but smooth enough so I can work on. After the sanding, I am using this pre-baked clay sheet and make a template for my top part. So in that way, I can get a perfect and neat look. You can cut the template with the hobby knife, or in my case, I'm just using a scissor. Here I am using the super glue for fixing all the pieces, and this time I am super precise about it. So I take my time and fix all my pieces where it should be. And like I said, I will go step by step with this project. So after the main top pieces, I divert my attention on the side ones. I applied some clay over those pieces and smooth a little. I also applied more clay on the middle part of the axe to create the hand base. And after the baking, back to sanding. You can take your more time and smooth the clay before baking, but I feel in this way I can do more work much faster and more efficient. However, it's all matter of which way you are more comfortable with. I honestly find myself more comfortable with the sanding one. Anyways, the next step is to do the same thing with the top part as I did on the previous step. Apply the clay, bake the clay, and sand the clay. So here I finished with the one-sided top part and I already sanded down. Now I have to focus the bottom blade part, which kinda be different from the first top part. And here I'm just showing you guys how I make those clay sheets, which is completely unnecessary, but it's still for those who's watching this clay art for the very first time. So what I did, I used a little cornstarch to smooth and soften the clay a bit. So in that way I can roll easily and make a thin sheet out of it. But before I bake my sheets, I always take some measurements so I don't run out of the sheet space. So here, as you can see, I already baked the sheets and cut the template or the shapes out of it. Even though it took me so long to come up with this way of modeling, but I feel so comfortable about it. So basically, I am kind of doing the same thing which I did the previously, but this time in a slightly different way. And also I want to give my axe a sharp blade kind of look. So this is the only reason I come up with this trick, where I made this blade into 3 pieces. Now after all the 3 pieces get attached, I simply put those into my main axe and fix it with the super glue. And soon after the glue dries, I start putting some more layers of clay so I can sand it into the blade shape. So once I satisfied, I bake my model again and start sanding the blade. And here, as you can see, the transition from where I begin and where it comes to the final shape. And it might look so complicated, but trust me, this is the best way of doing the polymer clay modeling. Now again, I'm going step by step process and taking my time here, because I don't want me to stress out with this, and honestly speaking, nobody ever did this type of work with the polymer clay. Never ever, not even in the dream, trust me. Here I'm using a different shade of clay just to differentiate my previous work from the new one. So I finally bake all of my new modification, and as you can see, I already sand it off and smooth it a little. Now it's time to add some more details on my model. So for that, I am using some pre-baked leftover clay pieces here to elaborate my model a little bit more, because this model has a lot of mini details. When I first started this project, I didn't know about those, and on that time, this model looks so easy. But as soon as I start realizing the reality is always different and challenging. So all I did is simply just not to give up. And in my opinion, this is the main key to unlock all of your goals and achievements. Alright, So now it's time to do not some but a lot of detailing. So for that I have this clay extruder so I can create some long line shape or any type of lining work. And again, I say this very often that working on a pre-baked model is super easy, especially when it comes to the detailing. And again, I will do the detailing process step by step and make some changes according to my model. Before I move forward, here I am working on the handle first. So as usual, I go the closest color and then paint it later. So I have so many leftover brown shades clay and I add a little bit yellow into it so I can get nearly perfect brown color. I know here this clay looks like a shit, but it is what it is. It's funny, I didn't notice when I was shooting this project, but I instantly realized when it comes to the editing zone. Anyways, so I applied the whole clay on the handle and roughly smoothed it out. And then I take the clay modeling tool and create some thick line texture on it. And I try to create those lines according to the real one. And it is very important that I follow the reference images because this handle is the hand of the crew. So this handle should look like one. After my main lining work done, I pick the thin lining tool and create some more thin line on top of it. So I bake the model and I kinda like it. And I'm pretty sure this handle will look more cooler when I do the paint job later. So before I start doing the further modeling, I take my measurements and mark it down in center because I want to get it right. And in that way, I can indicate myself more precisely. Next step will be the same. I draw the templates on the pre-baked sheet and cut it out and place it with the super glue. I also sand the pieces and smooth it in the same time. All the template I just come up with my very own, but still I keep the original design as much as possible. One more thing, before I fix those pieces with the super glue, I already take all my measurements and take all my precautions because super glue dries in seconds, so you probably have 2 or 3 seconds to perform your job. If you place it wrong by the mistake, it could lead you a bigger problem and you may end up by ruining the whole part. And it will be difficult to fix and more annoying to do the whole work again, so be careful. Another thing is the original design of the Stormbreaker has much carving, which I cannot imply here without any mini carving tool. So here I am keeping as simple as possible, but at the same time fully detailed. So here, as you can see, I basically finished all the main detailing and I believe I do a pretty good job overall. So after all the hard work done, let's have some fun. For the coloring, first I will give my model a base coat of silver. You can use any silver paint, but I have a very awesome metallic acrylics paint by ARTEZA. So I add different shade and make my own very own unique shade out of it and applied a very thick coat on the model as a primer. Once the paint dries, I get the perfect idea of my model, how it will look like in the final. So first I complete the handle by adding more brown clay and try to blend those two by adding the same texture on the handle. Next part gives me really hard time to create some root branches on the axe and attach on the handle. This part is kinda tricky. I tried multiple times and took me so long. But on my 5th attempt, I got some success. Even though it didn't turn out the way I wanted, but still, I call it a success. So after the baking, I applied my final silver coat with the airbrush. After the paint dries, I am applying the dark silver color on the edges and on the embossing area to differentiate some parts. Here I am very careful and using a very thin brush and try to avoid overpaint those areas where I don't want it. So as you can see, the overall contrast looks so nice, but I still have some more stuff to do. So these are the silver dust. This dust is quite expensive, even though it's not necessary to apply on this model, but with that you will get the very realistic look. But make sure you don't apply too much. Here I'm just trying to blend all colors together. So the next step is create some highlights and shadows. So for that, I often use this makeup palette for the eye shades. The reason for that is A, these are cheap, and B, I am kinda comfortable with them. But keep in mind, these are not reversible, so make sure you apply it very little at a time. And trust me, with that you can create so many different types of shades and highlights. Or you can use airbrush to create those, but I always prefer eye shades. So the second last step is to repaint the branches and cover those unwanted paint. So again, I create my very own dark wooden shade of brown and paint it all over the handle. After that, I give some highlights with the dry brush technique. So in the very last, I have these white threads. So I dipped into the dark brown paints and make sure the threads soak very good amount of that color. And then I leave it to dry. After that, I simply roll them on the handle, one on the middle and the second one at the very bottom. And don't forget to fix it with the super glue. And guys, our Stormbreaker is ready to chop some heads. So I really hope you enjoyed today's video. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel for more artwork. And also follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Link in the description box below. I will see you soon, and until my next video, bye bye.